Hello and welcome to Next 2.0 on WQLN PBS NPR. Next is produced by the Public's Voice Media. I'm your host, Marcus Atkinson. If you want to know more about Next 2.0, you can go to Facebook and like the page. You can also follow us on Instagram at Next 2.0 Erie. There you can keep up with upcoming show promos, events, and clips about what's next for our communities and our democracy. Thank you so much for tuning in. I've got a guest that has been a resident of Erie, who actually grew up in Erie and has since moved away. And I'll start, Paul Flemings. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're a resident where now?
In Tampa, Florida.
He's in Tampa, Florida. Grew up here in Erie.
Born and raised in Erie, Pennsylvania.
All right. And I just want to set this up because, we were at a meeting together and we talked a little bit about the whole idea of giving back to where you're from. And we talked about the proverbial village that raised the two of us and just how many robust mentors that we had around us. And it made me think about that iconic scene from The Lion King, one of my favorite cartoons, when Simba looks into the water and he starts to see an image of his father.
Yeah.
And Rafiki lets him know, it's time for you to come back home. It's fun. You've been hanging out with Timon and Pumbaa. Y'all been kicking it.
Yeah.
We got business to handle as a pride. And, as you grow older, all of us kind of wrestle with this, I think, especially those of us that come from nurturing villages. When do I give back? How do I give back? Do I give back? And, when you don't, sometimes it is something that pricks at your conscience. And I know that one of the things, or the thing that brings you back this year, is an initiative that you started that gives back to the community. And it's based upon a particular situation from a friend of yours, right?
Correct.
And so I want to move forward to that in just a minute. But first, unpack your childhood or your beginnings in Erie, Pennsylvania. What was this experience like for you? I remember you from watching you play basketball at East.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's probably where most people remember me from. But again, I was born and raised. I grew up in the Franklin Terrace. Went to East High School. Graduated in 1988. Went on and joined the military and moved off, traveling the world and seeing different things. But I always talk about the impact that Erie had on me and the folks that I watched growing up ahead of me, the Mr. Myers, Gregory Myers, Mr. Johnny Johnson, Lee Smith, Bobby K, mentors who didn't know that they were mentors. They were just doing the right thing in front of us, and so we watched it, right? And then as I grew up trying to emulate those things, it always came back to me on what it was or what was available to do at home. So 5 years ago, I partnered with my good friend, Mrs. Rhonda Caldwell. She's born and raised in Erie as well, graduated in East High School. We got together and we started talking about how we could give back. Rhonda's a resident of Woodbridge, Virginia. And we talked about what we could do to give back. At the time, we were going through the tragic loss of my best friend, Eric Kenneth Clayton, and we were trying to figure out something we could do to help underprivileged kids in our community kind of move on to college and recognize what their potential's like. So we crafted up this concept of a scholarship. And so in 2020, after Eric's death, we came up with the concept of the Eric Kenneth Clayton Memorial Scholarship, which provides $1,000 scholarships to needy students in the Erie community. We weren't really familiar with how the scholarships were supposed to go. So all of that was kind of, we were trying to figure out what the best way to do things. And Lee Smith was always there, kind of guide me and give me, some direction on what it is. And so when we put it together with some of the same personalities that Eric had. Eric wasn't always the most scholarly person. And so what we did, instead of making it one of those, we had to have a 4.0 or 4.5, we made it so you had to have a 3.5 to a 2.5, right? Because those students need help too, right? And a lot of times those students kind of fall to the wayside because they're giving the money and the resources to the kids that are at the top of their class.
Well, Paul, let me walk you backwards for a minute or two. And the whole idea of mentoring and you, so in large part, you are emulating what you've seen growing up.
Correct.
Right? And you are honoring a friend of yours, and I'll let you unpack more of what happened to Eric. At what point did you realize, as you were being mentored in this village, that you were getting something valuable and life-changing?
Yeah, so I'll probably go back to when I started playing sports, right? Because at the time, it was the coach right? It was the coach who always, kind of set the standard and let you know what to do and how to do things, right? But it's being around that coach and those specific people that I realized, hey man, I grew up in a place where Greg Myers was my second grade teacher, right? Lee Smith was on the radio every weekend, right? So I always heard him. Johnny Johnson was my sixth grade teacher and my sixth grade middle school basketball coach, right? Right? I didn't see a lot of those guys in my community that had direct contact with me. I knew that they were members in the church. I knew that they were members at GCAC and John F. Kennedy Center, Martin Luther King Center, the Booker T. Washington Center, but I never had any direct contact with those. So when I thought about it, I thought that, man, these guys are like, because you see the other kids start to come up and you're like, hey, he went to school with Mr. Johnson. Hey, he went to school with Mr. Myers. Mr. Myers was the principal at this school when this kid was there. So it was at that time where I'm coming into my adult age and I'm starting to move around. And every time I came back, it was always something that brought me back to those guys, because the things that they said, the things that they did, the way they went about living life. And again, I get it. We all make mistakes, but it was the important part, that seeing them consistently do it, that made me say, hey man, you can be that way. You can come back and you can help impact and influence your community, even though you don't live here, right? That like I said, that thing that my friend and I talked about was, look, what can we do so that when we are no longer here, we can say that we made an impact. We came back and we did the best that we could do for the community that raised us, that helped us see things differently and move out. So it was really at like the middle to high school age where I realized who those guys were and the impacts that they had, not just on me, but throughout the city, because those weren't names that I just saw. Those were names that were, they were being interviewed on TV. They were being interviewed on the radio. They were producing and part of programs that were uplifting the community. And to me, it just, lit that light underneath me and said, hey man, you can come back and do these things. And it's funny, every time I see those guys, they're like, look at little Paul Flemings, man. The boy done growed up and came home, right? And the pride I get from that is immense, because look, I love where I'm from. I love, coming home and seeing my family and friends, but I also know that, I have business other places. I have things that I do outside of that. That does not mean that I can't be a resourceful part of where I come from.
So when you come from a nurturing village the way that we did, what I find is as you get older, so many people take that for granted and not really recognizing and understanding until they get to a certain point in their life, like, wow, we were really, really well taken care of. And because that was your reality growing up, and it was so all encompassing and holistic, looking through that lens, how does it make you look at this generation in front of you now? Because obviously we grew up with a certain reality. What goes through your mind as you see the ebbs and flows of today's generation?
Yeah, so being part of the mentoring scene was always something I wanted to do, because I always wanted to give back to the same type of thing that kind of reared me. And so in doing so, I always make it a choice to engage young adults, right? And it's anywhere between maybe 13 up to maybe like 25, right? Because I want to know what they think. I want to know why they see things the way they see things, why they respond to
I love how you say you make the choice to do that.
Yeah,
Very intentional.
It is instinctively and intentional, because I want them to know that, one, just because I'm not your dad or your uncle or your brother, it doesn't mean that I don't care about your future. I'm concerned about your future. Obviously, I know somebody that you're related to, and so I'm asking these questions because I want to see what it is. I think that when you engage this generation, they're very opinionated about what things should look like, and a lot of times I try to break it down and explain to them that, like, you're looking in a mirror that shows you things that you're not responsible for, because you weren't here when the barriers for that were being knocked down or people were kicking in these doors and doing these things. You came along when it was available, right? What's available now was not always available, right? If it wasn't always available for me, just imagine what it was like for my parents, right? And so you come along at a time that's a good time, because you have the Marcuses, you have the Pauls, the Lee Smiths, the Shannon Loftons. You have those guys, and those guys are trying to make an impact for your future, your kids' future. And so I'm not saying that you should walk around patting us on the back, because the things that we don't do because we want accolades and we want, credit for them. We do those things because we care, right? I generally care about what happens. And so when I ask them and they give me their answer, I let them have their answer, because I'm a firm believer that in order for a young adult to recognize what it is, they have to have skin in the game. It has to mean something to them. It has to be part of what they think it is and not necessarily me. So I'm not telling them how they have to think. I'm just bringing it to their attention, that things that they don't recognize or they haven't seen.
And I go back to the village that we're talking about. And the one thing that I recognized over time, and I can hear it in your voice as well, is that we were seen and heard, right? I remember watching a show on Oprah Winfrey years and years ago. There was a professional on her show, and she talked about children needing to be nurtured. And she said one of the litmus tests was, do your eyes light up when they walk in the room? And she said it is so soul crushing for a child to feel like they aren't a priority, to feel like they don't matter, to feel like they aren't seen.
Yeah.
We grew up feeling, not just from our families and our parents, but from our community, we felt like we were seen.
Right.
And I think about some of the angst, the anger, the frustration of this new generation. I feel like, and I want your take on this, a lot of them, to me, feel like a child or children that don't feel seen or heard. And when you do engage, sometimes you feel that frustration, the opinionation or what have you. Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so when it comes to something like that, the thing that always stands out in my mind is even though we were seen, there were standards that we had. And it didn't matter who it was in the community, right? If the Leon Hooks, the Willie McAdories, look, if you weren't doing what you were supposed to do, they told you, hey, your mom and dad wouldn't allow that to happen, right? And so in today's community, we lack that, because there's always a sense in my mind that when you talk to young adults, that, like you say, they have this angst, they have this frustration because you're just trying to tell me what to do.
Right.
And I explained to them, look, everybody's entitled to their opinion, to include you, right? But just because it's your opinion doesn't mean it's right. It just means it's your opinion. And I'm not saying that you can't have your opinion. I'm saying that it's more important to be open. Like we just talked about in the meeting. You can hear anything, but if you don't receive it, it's just words. My dad told me this when I was 10 years old, and I'll never forget it. He said, son, you know why you have 2 ears and 1 mouth? I said, no, I'm not sure, Dad. He said, son, you should be listening twice as much as you're talking, right? You never know when you can use it. Mm-hmm. But if you don't listen and take it in, you'll never know you can use it.
Especially when you hear the voice of experience on a particular topic.
Right.
Speaking, T.D. Jakes said something one time that was real fly. He said, you can have all kind of folk debate the cost of olive oil. This person over here is asking the chef. This person over here is asking the restaurateur. This person is asking the grocery store owner. When you get the real answer, when you talk to that crushed olive behind the olive factory.
That's facts.
They can tell you the real price of olive oil.
That's fact.
And so when you talk to somebody who's been through it, 2 ears and 1 mouth. I want to hear it because you've been through it.
That's right.
You've seen it.
A guy told me this. I was at a mentoring session in Tampa, probably about a month ago with the fraternity. And the mentor, the guy who was a guest speaker, was asking, what would you tell yourself if you were to talk to yourself 15 years ago? What advice would you give yourself? And the first panelist had the best answer. And I said, hey, I'm going to adopt that answer. He says, what would you tell yourself? He said, I would tell myself, self, your mom and your daddy knew what they was talking about, right? You didn't think they knew because you was the little kid. Right. You thought. He said, self, your mama and daddy knew what they were talking about. Because it's what you said, Marcus, it's the experience that they had. They lived the things that we were only thinking about or imagined doing. And so when they gave you that advice, they gave it to you from a place of love. They gave it to you from a place of nourishment. They wanted you to be well and do well, but they were giving it to you because they thought you needed it. Mm-hmm. You didn't think you needed it because, hey, I'm 15, man. I got all the answers. My mom and dad, I used to say all the time, my dad's old, till I became the old dad. And now my daughter says to me, hey, Dad, you're old, and you don't know what you're talking about. I say, I remember that.
I remember that.
Keep that in mind.
So let's bring that back to this event. And so you're talking about this event. And one, when it comes to the young people that are the recipients, the scholarship that you've been, how many years now?
This is 5 years.
You've been doing this for 5 years. Do you get the sense that they have an understanding as to what place it comes from inside of you? Talk about that before we talk about how you started the scholarship.
Yeah, so for us, part of the thing for Rhonda and I, it was to make the scholarship a personal thing. And so what we do prior to is we go and we meet the recipients of our scholarship, via email, via just text, right? To communicate to the family, to let them know that, hey, look, even though we're going to be awarding your child this scholarship, we want them to know that this is a relationship that we're trying to build, right? And it doesn't have to end this year when you receive the scholarship. If next year you're in a situation where you need stipend money or you need, money to, get you some particulars, like we want you to know that, look, we might not be able to give you the same amount that we gave you last year, but we want you to know that, look, we have the ability to reach out and get these resources, and so we can help again. And so we've built relationships with the past recipients. I just got a card, like I said, from the first kid that received it in 2000. He's now a college graduate, right? And hearing him talk and hearing him say thank you, just to me, it just goes full circle, and it helps us to know that, look, we're not the reason he graduated. We're part of his village.
There it
and
is.
we helped build this legacy. And I'm now telling him, hey, you know what that means now, right? That means that once you get to a place where you can do it, you got to circle back too, right? Because now it's part of your lineage, your legacy, what it's supposed to look like for you. And we're encouraged by that alone. We just want to do whatever we can to help these young kids, because we know that we didn't always have access to these resources when we were that age.
Gotcha. So let's talk about Mr. Clayton. So Eric Clayton, you're doing this in his honor. Talk to us about how his journey ended. That was the impetus or the catalyst to this.
So Eric was my best friend. We've been friends for maybe 47 years. We met in pre-K. Our mothers were teachers together. And so we became friends at an early age. And he was it for me. I was it for him. There was a point in time where you didn't see D and E together throughout the city when I was here. And Eric developed cirrhosis of the liver through bad eating habits. He drank very rarely, if ever often, didn't do drugs and any of those other type of things. So he developed this due to, his family genetics and things like that. And so he developed this disease where he had to be on dialysis. And if anybody knew Eric was one of those stubborn type people that just refused to do what anybody else. He was going to live by his own rules and decided, right? So now he's in a position under the age of 50 where now he's mandated to go and have this dialysis done 3 days a week, right? Which occupied his time, which didn't allow him to go and enjoy life and do all the things that he want. And so at the end, he was really bothered and upset. And I remember conversations with him and telling him, hey man, you had an opportunity to change and do these things, right? So like, I understand that you're mad and I love you, man, but I want you to face what you're facing the right way. We're gonna always be here for you. Me, your daughters, your son, your sisters and brothers, because we love you. But we also have to hold you accountable too, right? Because if we don't hold you accountable, you tend to believe that somehow you were being mistreated or somehow this didn't come to you the way it's supposed to. I truly believe in God. I believe that the man upstairs makes no mistakes. My favorite verse in the Bible is Hebrews 11:1 says, now, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things unseen. The reason why that's so impactful for me is because you don't always have to know why it's going to happen. Just know it's going to happen. And if the man upstairs says it's going to happen, you're not going to change it, right? If he told you in advance, you'd probably mess it up, right? So understand, this is what it is. And this is how we live, right? And so, and always just trying to be a true friend to him, just explaining to him. And in the end, when he passed, one of the things that Rhonda and I always talked about was, what could we do in our hometown to pay homage and keep his legacy alive? And so we came up with this concept about this scholarship. I talked to Brother Lee Smith, and he told me, hey man, we had this program. I started looking at, Bobby Kegler, Gregory Myers, Johnny Johnson. These guys had already had scholarships. So it was the perfect venue for us to, display our love and admiration, but to also explain his story and to let people know that, look, you don't always have to start where you want to be. You just have to start, right? Where you finish is on you. As long as you have the resources and the ability and the will to do it, right? Because I think that that's what happened in the end. I think in the end, his will just wasn't there because he didn't appreciate the life he had before it became what it was. And that's not to knock him. It's just that I think as adults, we look so much into where we are, we forget that where we came from, right? We forget that it wasn't always in this place. Like I told you, man, seeing you today and hearing you talk, look, I done seen some of your podcasts. I done seen you on Facebook. I done seen you out and about, right? But we talked about it this morning. We all make mistakes. We don't always, this isn't the life that I always lived, right? I haven't always been a guy that tried to give back. But every day I'm working to be better. Every day I'm trying to impact my community and do what's best so that when I do have to leave here, God willing, that I did the work that God would have me do. I met and fulfilled my purpose, and I can walk away knowing that altogether that I've did the best that I can.
You put it out there.
Yep.
So the thing that's special about this weekend as we start heading toward the finish line is this is Father's Day weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a weekend that you give to this on an annual basis. Yep. Your husband, you're a father, your grandfather. So you have your own tribe, and yet you take this pilgrimage from there to here in order to do that. Talk about the significance of that sacrifice and what makes you do that. Because I would imagine there's other folks is like, we'd rather you be here with us, absolutely, and yet here you are.
So when we made the commitment, we didn't always know when the actual ceremony was going to be because it was our first, flash at it. And so it just happened to be Father's Day weekend. And so it worked out. Each year, when I realized that it was every Father's Day, as you could probably tell, I started receiving this flack from home like, hey, you giving up your Father's Day and this, that, and the other. And so what I would tell my wife all the time is, look, if I'm going to be committed to something, I have to be committed to it, right? I can't look in these young adults' face and tell them that they have to be committed to something, and then I take the day off because it's Father's Day. Oh, it's about me. It is about me, but it's about being a father. It's about being a brother, a friend, a mentor, right? And giving back to the community. If I have to spend the rest of my Father's Days in Erie, Pennsylvania, so be it. My wife understands that. She may not like it, but she understands it. And she knows that I'm committed. I told her I was coming over here today and I was going to be doing the first time I was going to do a podcast. She's like, oh, Lord. And I said, babe, listen, I'm going to get a chance to talk about what's important to me and why what I do for Eric matters, why what I do for the city that I love matters. I remember traveling abroad and being in Germany and telling people I was from Erie. And the first thing they say is, oh, you're on the lake? And I said, yeah, if you know the lake, then you know Erie, right?
That's what we're known for.
And that was it. But just exposing them to the fact that, look, you can come from any place. You can do anything, right? But you have to, one, you have to put the work in. Two, there are going to be sacrifices. And three, everybody's not going to be happy about what you do. But in the end, long as I did what I thought was right and I did my best, I can live with that, man. And let me say this before. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my story with you. It's great seeing you and Matt, man, talking about old times and laughing and joking about it. If I had an opportunity to do this every week, I would try to do it because I think that there are people out there who need to hear it, right? That's why I asked the question in the meeting, how are we packaging this up for people to know? Because I'm going to go and tell people about it. I'm going to go and tell people about Marcus and Matt. I'm going to go and tell people about Shannon and that men's fathers mentoring program. I'm going to tell them about that. And whether they do something about it is on them.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that I shouldn't tell them. That's the circle that I'm involved in. Those are the things that I'm excited about. But yeah, thanks again. I really appreciate the opportunity, man.
Absolutely. And you're doing that this weekend at the Martin Luther King Center.
Yep.
Yep.
So the Martin Luther King Center, we have the My Brother's Keeper Scholarship Program.
Excellent. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on. And thank you all for listening as well. This is something that's near and dear to my heart. I'm a firm believer. Everybody's raised by somebody. And, the term "it takes a village" can sound redundant because we hear it so often, but it doesn't stop the fact that it's true. It takes a village, and whether that is coaches, neighbors, pastors, church members, there are people in your village, from your village, that help shape you into whatever you are and whatever you're doing. And so we do this show today. Hopefully it encourages you and convicts you just a little bit to say, can I do more? Can I do something to give back and to make sure that I am honoring my obligation to the village that raised me? And so that's it for our show today. You can tune in next time for more discussion and analysis with local and national guests. Remember, the Next 2.0 streams on Fridays on all major podcast platforms and on the fourth Sunday of the month at 4 p.m. on WQLM PBS NPR, which is 91.3 FM on your dial. If you want to leave a message, comment, or suggestion for the show, you can call our next hotline at 814-240-8816. We look forward to hearing from you. I'm Marcus Atkinson. Come and join us again so that you can hear about what's next for our communities and our democracy. Peace.